Diabetes pack?
Yes, it is. Well, it's actually Diabetes Patient Advocacy Coalition. Hi, everyone. Sorry, we're just figuring out how to stream to Justin's Facebook at the same time that we stream to ours. Okay.
So we're live right now?
We are live right now.
Okay. I don't see it on your Facebook page yet, but
It
I'm on
will,
your Facebook page.
it will, okay. Try
Once it's
refreshing.
there, I can keep refreshing, and once it's there, I'll share it. So,
Okay. Okay.
oh, there it
Well,
is.
yay! Okay, cool. Welcome everyone to the Diabetes Technology Options and Access Brown Bag. Um, just to give a little intro to DPAC, if you're new to us, we ensure quality of and access to care, medications, and devices for patients living with diabetes, and to educate, inspire, and empower patient advocates, as well as lawmakers toward meaningful action. Our social media are below, and Justin is currently in the process of helping us live stream to his Facebook, because he's an influencer and he has tons of followers. Yay!
I have influence. I'm
He
a
has
journalist with
influence.
influence.
Okay, well, these are our two speakers today. I'll start with Melinda. She's a nurse, diabetes educator, and virtual diabetes specialist. For over a decade, she has taken this fight to legislators both locally and on Capitol Hill through the support of organizations like the Association of Diabetes Care and Education Specialists, also known as ADCES, Breakthrough T1D, formerly known as JDRF, and DPAC. Yours truly. She also volunteers at diabetes camps and played a key role in developing and supporting her company's type 1 diabetes and CGM programs. Linda is currently pursuing a master's degree in health informatics and AI, which I find really interesting. We were just talking about that earlier. Maybe we'll get into it again later. Justin Easter, aka Diabetes Tech, is a storyteller, podcaster, and advocate at the forefront of diabetes technology. His journey began with an incorrect type 2 diabetes diagnosis, but thanks to the diabetes community's support, he pursued an autoantibody test and was correctly diagnosed with LADA. Through his YouTube channel, podcasts, and social media, where you can find him at diabe_tech. He shares insights, personal experiences, and the latest in diabetes technology. Let me stop sharing so that I can see everyone's beautiful face. Okay. Can you each tell us a bit more about your background in diabetes technology and why it's important to you?
I'll go
Sure.
first, I guess.
Yeah, go first. Yeah, go for it.
Um, yeah, I feel like I'm less known, so I'll kick us off. I mean, so my introduction, when I think about that question, goes back to my first insulin pump that I was put on essentially against my will. I wasn't a fan, but I was eventually talked into it, and actually liked it a lot. Pretty much stayed on pumping. Went off and on because of, the burnout. And then I thought CGM was a game changer. I wore the Dexcom 7, not G7, the 7. I had diabetes for a long time. When I was pregnant, and that was, I thought, life-changing until, and excuse me, my pump's alarming, until I started an AID, and that literally changed my life, because before a smart pump, there were many nights where I would be afraid to go to sleep, and I didn't have like full-blown panic attacks or anything like that, but I legitimately lost a lot of sleep. I remember there were nights where I was just like curled up in a ball freaking out. Oh gosh, I'm gonna fall asleep soon, and is my blood sugar gonna bottom out? But when I started in AID, like I think it really took me about 3 months to fully like appreciate it and not freak out on occasion before going to sleep. But I was able to sleep because of the predictive low glucose suspend. And, on occasion, I still have a low from time to time at night. It's pretty rare. And when they occur, thanks to the predictive low glucose suspend, they're not as severe. So I've never had another severe overnight low since being on an AID. And I have had quite a few in my past, in the days of MPH especially. So, and then that kind of guided my professional path. I knew I actually wanted to do pre-med, but decided I didn't want to be in school that long. So I switched to nursing and became a diabetes educator. And I just love talking about anything diabetes and especially diabetes tech. So I'm excited to be here, especially beside Justin.
Yeah, so diabetes tech is in my brand name, Diabetic. I'm new to the club. I mean, I was diagnosed just 3 years ago. At first, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and I went for 6 months with that diagnosis, going with that treatment, taking the medication prescribed to me, eventually starting long-acting insulin. And I thought that like the blood glucose monitor I was using was so cool because it tested my glucose levels and then sent the number to my phone. And that was awesome. And I wanted to share it. And that was my first TikTok I ever made, diabetes related. So I shared that, and within minutes I started having comments pour in saying, you probably don't have type 2 diabetes. You probably have type 1 or type 1.5 latent autoimmune diabetes of adults. And so I continued to make TikToks about my journey. And once I started seeing that like everyone kept saying I didn't have type 2, I was like, okay, I need to take this seriously. So I went and got my autoantibody test and I got the correct diagnosis. And that's when I noticed or realized the power of social media and community and crowdsourcing of information. And I realized that I could continue to document my experience and share all of the lessons that I was learning, all of the fears, all of the emotions I was experiencing, all of the lessons from my diabetes educator and endo, and just make videos about it and share that information to people who may be just as lost as I was, and just as uninformed as I was. So I kept doing that, and the TikTok grew and grew and grew. And then it eventually led me to just moving over to Instagram, putting out content there. I was already a YouTuber, which is why all of this felt pretty natural. I worked in technology for years. I worked in Hollywood prior to that for 8 years. So production, interviewing, storytelling, editing all came very naturally to me. So I started a YouTube channel for Diabetic. I started a podcast, and slowly my Justin Tech YouTube channel kind of went lower priority and Diabetic went higher, because what I found I was doing was I was harnessing this community, bringing people together and starting conversation, and maybe even having an impact on the future of technology, because not just patients were watching my videos, but industry leaders were watching my videos and coming on my show. And I could just say to their face, like, I don't like that you put like the name of your company on the front of your device. I think it'd look cleaner if it didn't have, like just really speaking blatantly as a consumer about what I think and what my thoughts are. And with my tech background and Hollywood background, it helped. I don't know. It helped me do it all.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I didn't realize that was also recent. Could you also tell us a tiny bit more about, we were just talking about before this call about the documentary that you worked on for the fires in LA?
Yeah. So I lived in LA for years. It's my home. And when the fires started, I was just watching like hopelessly from Mexico City in horror. And I was connected with these volunteers led by You're Just My Type, a foundation that does like community events and also helps people find supplies when they're in need. They were gathering supplies and distributing them to people who had lost their homes, who were evacuated and couldn't go back to their homes, people whose medical supplies were completely decimated and burned. And these people were having issues refilling their medications because pharmacies would say, well, you just refilled this a month ago, so we can't refill it. And even though they said my house burned down, there was a whole bunch of things that they needed to do in order to get that. And when your house just burned down, that could be stressful, right? So they were helping these people. I was connected to them, and my diabetes educator was also telling me about people who had lost their homes and their stories. And I was like, this story needs to be told. I don't want the work that these volunteers are doing to just like disappear and not be heard. So within 6 days, I secured a budget. Medtronic supported the endeavor and allowed me to put all of that money that they gave me. I put it into the production. I didn't make any money on it. I didn't want to. And so I went there, interviewed people who lost their homes, interviewed the volunteers, interviewed a patient advocate and licensed vocational nurse. I think that's what it stands for. Who like helped get people supplies in the immediate aftermath. And it's just an incredible story. It's uplifting, it's inspiring, and it just was um, great to see how humanity came together. So it's called A Community United. It's a 15-minute short documentary on YouTube. Just Google or YouTube Diabetic or A Community United documentary, and you'll find it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll drop that later after the wrap back. Can you both give us a broad overview of the current options available for diabetes management for our viewers?
Melinda, you go first.
Oh my goodness. Well, I will say first, I know this talks about tech, but I think more rather than thinking about it as tech, I think of it as innovation. So to me, like newer insulins are a part of this as well. Something as a diabetes educator that I appreciated is now that the ADA standards of care really recognizes open source. If that's the route you want to go, I appreciate that, whether you're going that route because you're trying to navigate insurance or financial issues, or that's just what you prefer. I think that's awesome. I think everybody should choose what they want, whether that includes tech or not. So I take it all the way up from these smart integrated insulin pumps all the way down to things like using the iPort, which is, inserted essentially like a pump site, but it allows you to give multiple injections in the same spot over and over. So I also feel like tech is associated with people that are using a pump or similar to or CGM. But for people with type 2 and also the LADA community, things like the iPort can be really great, or even children if they are scared of injections and adults that are scared of injections. That can be a great source. And then there's, smart insulin pen caps. I feel like, Justin, you can answer this better, but I think that's kind of my key takeaway is I would encourage you to think about tech as a broad spectrum, not just technology. The technology is amazing, and I think everyone should have access to it, but it's also not for everyone. So I think everybody should have access to everything so that they can choose what works best for them.
Yeah. Remind me what the question was, and I can answer it.
The question was, can you give us a broad overview of the current options available for diabetes management?
Okay. Yeah. So I feel like now more than ever, I feel like there's, especially worldwide, there's so many different options for people, especially at least when it comes to insulin pumps and continuous glucose monitors and the combinations that they can make with those. There's a lot more interoperability. There's also a lot of DIY options for people if they are looking for more control and customization. There are at least 3 major do-it-yourself algorithms out there that work on iPhone or Android that people are taking advantage of. And they're also getting recognized by the ADA. In fact, the ADA just put a recommendation in their standards of care, not recommending DIY apps, but recommending that healthcare professionals support people who come in saying they want to use them. And I think that's phenomenal. And I think it got to this point because so many people are using them. And even one of them, DIY Loop, which is a very popular one, has led to a cleared version of that algorithm based in information coming from people and studies and clinical trials from people using the DIY app. It's led to Tide Pool Loop, the cleared version of it, which is going into a cleared pump, the Twist pump, which should be out the second half of this year. So we're seeing more algorithms than ever, and we're seeing interoperability between pumps and CGMs and a lot more options. And with the Twist coming and potentially CAM APS FX coming to the US, we're going to have a lot more options, which is exciting.
Wow, yeah, that actually kind of partially answers my next question, which was, what trends are you two seeing in the landscape of available devices? And what are some recent advancements in diabetes technology that people with diabetes should know about?
I can continue because it kind of connects to with what I was saying. So I just mentioned CAM-APS-FX. That is the only algorithm currently approved for use during pregnancy. So I'm really happy to finally see an algorithm meant for people who are pregnant who need a much tighter control. Currently in the United States, there are no available pumps now cleared for use during pregnancy. Are they used? Absolutely. Are they cleared? Do they have the best control needed? Not necessarily. There's a lot of work that needs to go into using these pumps. So the CAM APS FX was cleared here by the FDA, but it doesn't have a pump yet. So I'm hoping to see that. But just seeing research going into pregnancy, especially through the ADAPT study, which is automated insulin delivery among pregnant women with type 1 diabetes, seeing that study come out showing that hybrid closed loop systems should be used during pregnancy, it's just great to see like that women are getting the research that they should be. And at least we're moving there. Outside of that, we're seeing a lot of phone control come to insulin pumps. We've got at least in the US, Omnipod got their iPhone app, only works with G6 right now, hopefully G7 soon. You've got Tandem's, both of their pumps work with iPhone. Medtronic doesn't have one yet, but their next insulin pump, the 8 series, which I have a video coming out all about the 8 series on YouTube tomorrow, so stay tuned, doesn't have a screen on it. So it's going to have to be controlled by a phone, and that's been announced. So I'm excited to see phone control. We're seeing phone control is also coming with the Twist. And then smartwatch control is also coming with the Twist. And I hope we see smartwatch control come to other pumps. AI is also a big thing that's coming. It's already here with Dexcom Stelo. Melinda, I know that you kind of were working with AI more recently. Have you seen, is that like one of the trends that you're seeing?
Yeah, so a lot of what I've pursued in doing my capstone project for my master's, I had to do a literature review, which was actually super fun for me because I got to nerd out over everything diabetes tech and AI. And really what I came across is there's a lot of amazing things as far as predicting diabetes, even with LADA, Justin. I have 2 family members with LADA. So I was diagnosed at the typical age, but I had a family member diagnosed at 30. I had a family member diagnosed at 50. I had a patient diagnosed at 94 with type 1. So there are a lot of tools out there that help with predicting type and preventing type 1, delaying the progression of type 1. There's not a lot out there. Sorry, all of those were type 2. Preventing the progression of type 2. But there wasn't a lot about type 1. But the things that I see coming are algorithms or chatbots, tools where you can put in your CGM data and you can get personalized information. And that's what's really exciting for me. The tool that I'm building for my project, I actually did one on the side just for fun, which was essentially designed to help people decide what CGM is best for them. And I included gestational diabetes in that because I agree with you, Justin, like that needs so much more attention, and even down to like MODI. You could specify by type and insulin pump. It was actually really easy to make. I can't code. I made that without coding. But the one I'm working on for my capstone project that I was telling Amanda and Justin about prior to the call was that it is designed to help people treat mild hypoglycemia and hyperglycemia, mild DKA at home. Because I think the statistic is 70 to 80% of the people that present to the ER with hypoglycemia are admitted. Only about, I think it was around 30% are admitted with high blood sugar. However, those with DKA are readmitted within 30 days at a very high rate. I want to say it was like 80%. So although there's fewer people being admitted with DKA, the ones that are being admitted continue to come back. So it's like, we need something to address this. And I'm sorry, my pump is beeping again, only when I'm not on mute. I'm
I
actually,
didn't even hear it.
okay.
Kind
Good.
of on that note too, with like hospitalizations, there was an incredible research study that came out during EASD last year. I get into it in my EASD roundup video that's on my YouTube channel. I don't remember it fully, but one thing that came out of it was like how people with type 2 diabetes who wore CGM, it dramatically reduced hospitalization and rehospitalization, right? And that was another trend I had listed, was that we're seeing CGMs now coming that are meant for people with type 2 not on insulin. I mean, we're even seeing CGMs or biosensors that are out for people without diabetes. But between those two things, people with type 2 are going to have a lot more information about their levels. They can get these CGMs without a prescription also. So if they're proactive, they don't wait to go to the doctor, they can test it out. And then even people without diabetes can potentially find out that they have diabetes sooner if they just want to test this out with a biosensor.
Yeah, as an educator, it kind of irks me when I'm working with somebody with type 2 and they come to me and they say, "Oh, my fastings are great." And I'm like, "Wonderful. What's happening the rest of the day?" "I don't know. My doctor said to do fastings. That's all I'm doing." And I'm like, "No, look at your A1C. Let's talk." Obviously, I'm much nicer, but in my head, I'm like, I want to shake the computer and shake your doctor. Like, and these people aren't necessarily even scared of doing finger pricks. It's just like, well, my doctor just said to do this. And so then it's just kind of coercing them into, well, let's just see just once. And then they're like, whoa. And then, or they come to me and say, oh, well, my diabetes isn't bad enough to wear CGM. I'm like, no. Like, if you can't afford it, that's one thing. That's a different conversation. We're going to go a different route. But if you don't feel like your diabetes is bad enough to wear it, you're actually the one, usually, in my experience, that needs to be wearing it. Not necessarily continuously, but research shows if you wear one quarterly, every 3 months, that A1Cs drop just with quarterly wear. The other thing that I feel like is really exciting is continuous ketone monitors. Those are definitely coming. They're out in other places. And I'm really excited to see those, not only because, you have a device that can monitor for ketones, but also because, we continue to push for coverage for SGLT2s, and GLP-1s in type 1. Those have proven to be effective. They're just not FDA approved for those purposes yet. And I know I plan in the future, my my advocacy efforts have already included some of that information. Like, yes, these things aren't covered for type 1. It's not because they're not effective. It's because they have this risk of euglycemic DKA. DKA, when your blood sugars are normal within that, a typical range, it's not, you're not 300 and having ketones. You might be 140 and you have ketones. So, I'm kind of, in my head, I've made up the story, and hopefully it will be true one day, that once CKMs are available, continuous ketone monitors are accessible and affordable, then maybe it'll be more likely that, we can move towards, okay, well, let's at least like get SGL2s and GLP-1s covered for type 1 that also have access to CKM, as we continue to work on bringing down cost and bringing accessibility to these people so that they can access all of these things.
Yeah, Melinda, you said that continuous ketone monitors aren't available here, but they're available are they available overseas? Are they available in other countries?
Yeah, I actually, I tried to look into this last night and then I chose sleep instead. So I wish I had prepared better. I was like, maybe this won't come up. And then here I am surfacing it. Um, From what I understand, I know there are active trials, and I've met people at conferences that are actually doing those trials. There's actually a couple of gentlemen that I met that are working on one that is a continuous ketone monitor in one site, and like there's another company or group that's working on putting a insulin pump next to a CGM, so it's one site. As far as I know, somebody in the chat can fact check me, or I mean, Justin, you would know. As far as I know, there's not any in the US that I'm aware of, but I don't want to say the name.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it wrong, but I think there's one overseas.
Yeah, I actually have it in the other room. I have a continuous ketone monitor. I just haven't tried it yet. It's from that one I have is from Bionics. They also make a continuous glucose monitor, which I've tried. And then you have Abbott is, I mean, I'm sure all the CGM companies are looking into ketones, but Abbott specifically has been very vocal about their research into a ketone monitor, a combined CGM and ketone monitor. And they were talking a lot about that at ATTD 1 year ago. And I interviewed them about it too. That's on my YouTube channel.
Oh wow, that's so exciting. I like before this conversation, I didn't even know those things were even like the concept of those existed. So thank you for
Yeah.
enlightening me about it. For someone who's just starting out or considering making a switch, what are some key factors to keep in mind when choosing a device?
I think that one major decision is how much control you want to have over your system and how much you want the management of diabetes to be part of your life, because there are options that allow for more or less control. One that allows for very little or a lot less thought process or tinkering is the Beta Bionics iLet, which is available in the United States. And it only requires one setting for setup, your weight. And what's so great about that is that it's a very accessible technology for physicians to offer that aren't specialists in diabetes, because it's you need the patient's weight. It's very simple. And then there's no official carb counting. There's just like logging normal size meal, smaller or larger for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So that's one that allows for very little control. But then there are a lot of systems that allow for more control, whether it be Tandem that has an extended bolus option and sleep mode, Omnipod that has activity feature, the MyLife EpsoMed pump with CAM APS has a bunch of control features like ease off and boost mode. That pump's only in Europe. Kaleido is another European pump that has a lot of features. And then I mentioned it earlier, but the DIY options, that would almost be like the next level of customization, tons of customization and options. And in some ways, they can make diabetes more a part of your life because you're just like tinkering more. But once you kind of get used to it, for at least for me and my experience with DIY, it does get pretty background and it's very, in the back of your mind. And then I'd say the last thing to keep in mind are like the control you want to have. Each of these systems and algorithms allow for different target ranges or target glucose. So DIY and the upcoming twist pump are going already and are going to allow as low as 87 milligrams per deciliter. I don't know what that is in millimoles. I should. Tandem Omnipod 5 are 110 and Medtronic is 100. So that's another thing to think about, how intense you want to be about like your control.
Yeah, I was like, I hope he mentions that that sequel, the twist pump goes down to 87, because that's really exciting. I don't know that I would do that. I don't know. I would play with it. But I know there's plenty of people that would want that. And so I don't care if I want it. I just want to want options out there for everybody, because I know there's people out there who would want that and would appreciate it. And I forget the high range. I think it goes to, is it 130 or something, Justin? But like it's a wide range. Not only does it go low, but there's a big span there for what you can set it to. I'm kind of feeling like a Debbie Downer. I feel like Justin does a great job pumping up tech, but then like I'm always going to cost. But I think part of that is just because I'm trying to also fit tech into type 2's lives, and it's not thought about for them often, or not necessary for all the things I said earlier. But also with cost. So when I think my number one tip is look at everything. If your provider is not able to tell you a little bit about every single option that's available, then I guess my tip was going to say rely on your provider. But if your provider cannot give you a little bit of information on all of the options, then you need to do your own exploring. And I would actually do your own exploring anyway, because you need to know all of the things that Justin just mentioned. Like Tandem's the only one that has an extended bolus. For some people, that's really important. You can do that on systems like Omnipod, but you're going out of the algorithm to do that, and you have to remember to go back into it. And if you're fine with that, great. If you say, hey, I want a fully tubeless option, then that's the reason you choose Omnipod. But you need to consider all these little details. And, if you're not super into the details and don't feel like you care, then, that's one thing, but there's plenty of options and resources out there to where you can compare those things and determine. In fact, that's kind of, my tool is not live, so I promise I'm not promoting my tool, but that's one reason why I'm excited about the tool that I'm building, because I've kind of, although I didn't train it with the intention of help me pick out which CGM I want, it can actually do that just because of the information that I've given it. So I'm hopeful that that will be out there in the world from someone will probably beat me to it, and that'd be fine. I just want it out there. But yeah, cost for sure. Something I see with people who finally get their hands on things is waiting until the end of the year, maybe to get, if you want a pump, but it's too expensive, wait until you've met your deductible. Don't ever skip any shipments or refills ever. It's after you met your deductible. If you can afford it and it's not putting you in a bind, do not ever miss any shipments. Don't look at your supplies when you get that reminder email and say, oh, I've got a ton. You look at your supplies and say, oh, I've got a ton, and now I have more coming. Fantastic. Justin and I was asking Justin if he was going to a conference next week, and he is, and I'm thinking about packing for that. And I'm taking like half of my supplies with me, because you never know what happens when you're traveling internationally. So even if you don't technically need them day to day, like when I'm traveling, I take a crazy amount of supplies. There's always reasons that you need extras, the fires, natural disasters. So I think that would be, I realize that's not necessarily for somebody that's starting out, but I guess if you're starting out, think about after you've met your deductible if cost is a concern. And then the next year, try to stockpile if you have a high deductible. If you've stockpiled, then in January, when you're like, I can't afford my pump supplies, you don't have to go off your pump or your CGM. You can reach into that stockpile.
No, thank you. And I don't think you're a Debbie Downer. I think this is an important topic to talk about. Actually, my next question was, we know that having options is one thing, but access is another. And I was going to ask, what are some of the biggest barriers to access right now when it comes to diabetes technology? And we have some questions also in the Q&A that are asking similarly about insurance. Many people with diabetes find that their insurance, not their healthcare provider, dictates what devices they can get. So what kind of advice do you have for someone who's struggling to get coverage for the diabetes tech that they need?
This is not a laughing matter. I'm going to read you word for word a note that I made for myself. Many people with diabetes find that their insurance, not their healthcare provider, dictates which device they get. I think we can just close the show now. We're done. That's drives me insane. Formularies, hold on, I need to take a breath. So, so if the device you want is not covered, is that what is the actual question? I guess it can be twofold. If you don't have insurance, and one of the issues I see, especially like at camp with kids that are coming off Medicaid and transitioning to real insurance, or transitioning to no insurance, or they're 26 coming off their parents' insurance, whatever the case may be. If you're between insurances or your insurance doesn't cover the device that you need, then the number one tip is to look into a prior authorization. That can sometimes be the biggest issue. And if that's the case, it's an annoyance, but it usually gets approved, and you've just got to get your physician or provider to complete the PA and send it in, and then it'll get covered. If you need to push that further and further, because sometimes they'll ask for a PA in year one, approve it, the next year they deny it. If it gets denied, you submit another one. I've personally gone through that myself, where it was covered. Next year, I was requested to submit a PA. That PA was denied, but my second one was approved. Went through that until I did that 3 times, and then I could no longer get it approved once I got to the year to where I had to submit 3 PAs. So at that point, there's a form of medical necessity, or medical necessity form. It can be called different things. And that is essentially where your provider is saying this person medically needs this device for whatever reason. And you can boil that down to the intricacies of the pump options. So maybe you need the islet because you need that lower target glucose, or you need tandem because you need the extended bolus for, say you have gastroparesis and you need your boluses to medically need them to be extended. Then and you want to stay within an algorithm, then Tandem's going to be your best option for you with Control IQ. So I feel like, and just checking resources, the ADCES website has a CGM insurance lookup tool. If you Google ADCES CGM insurance lookup tool, will get you there. You can actually go in and put your insurance information, and it will tell you in that if you need a PA or not. And then there are patient assistance programs, so don't check into that. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm so mad at this company for not approving this device for this patient. Have that anger, you have your right to that anger. But once you get past that, calmly reach out to the company and seek some assistance, because you may be surprised at how much they can do to help as well. And then one more thing on I'll hush, but Blue Circle. I am a huge fan of Blue Circle. It offers free diabetes care in, I forget how many states, close to 10 now, if not more. It was actually even pretty recently approved in Alabama, which is where I am, which was exciting. Blue Circle offers free education to anyone with type 1 diabetes, so long as it's approved in your state. So if you have access to Blue Circle Health in your state, seek them out. It's there, you can't do any wrong.
Melinda, would you
Yeah.
mind putting that in the chat also, the website,
For ADC?
yes,
Or,
ADCS
okay.
website. Someone in the Q&A was asking.
Yeah, I want that too. I wrote it down. So as some other things when it comes to like barriers is also the fact that there are only 6,000 endos in the US, and there are nearly 40 million people with diabetes. So if you do the math, I was going to do it before and then I forgot. It's not good. The amount of patients that endos would need to see is impossible. So we currently don't have enough endos, but primary care doctors can help a lot, especially many of those people have type 2 diabetes, and there's room for primary to help there. But I think oftentimes people don't have access to the education and doctors that they need, just because, and many people have to drive hours to get to their endo. Then maybe they don't go to an appointment. It's just inconvenient. So that's one thing. And then with insurance companies, that is a huge thing. And we've all had our fair share of experiences and headaches with insurance companies. I've had many of mine. For example, I've used a pump I used Omnipod forever since I was diagnosed roughly. And it was always like $80 for a 3-month supply. Well, with my new insurance, it's $255 for a 3-month supply. There was no way for me to get that, or to get that information of how much that would ultimately cost. Took hours and hours of phone calls when I was trying to choose insurance companies. This wound up like working for my whole plan, but it's very difficult to do research and proactively search what's best for you when it comes to health insurance companies. Most companies just wait until you have the insurance to tell you like the deal. It's very complicated and it's done on purpose. So that's one thing, but there are also different ways of getting pumps, whereas like Omnipod is a pharmacy benefit. So you're going to get that, go into the pharmacy, you're going to pick that up. And then there's tube pumps. So like Tandem Mobi, for example, which I'm testing out right now, I had to pay $900 to get the pump and its starter pack supplies, which actually was cheap. According to the person I was talking to, I was asking her, I was like, well, how much do some people have to pay? She's like, oh, some people have to pay thousands of dollars to get their pump. So sometimes people don't want to choose the pump that's right for them on their current insurance because it's too expensive in the way that they need to go for it. So like someone with a plan where Mobi would cost $4,000, they may opt for Omnipod because it's pharmacy benefits and just is more appealing monetarily, but not because they actually want it. There's no consistency here. So, and then also I just had an issue with insulin, and where the insulin I've used for years works for me. I was told to, that they don't cover that I have to get these other formularies, and the other ones don't work for me. So we did a prior authorization. Great. what I didn't know would happen is that I wound up being allowed to get this new insulin, but the insulin went from $35 a month, so like 105 for a 3-month supply, to $255 for a 3-month supply, just because I need this different type of insulin, which I don't even think that should be a thing. And I've like wanted to fight it and see if I could even fight that. I don't know if I can, but like I can't use the other insulins just because they either burn or don't work for my lifestyle. So other people may opt to not pay the 255 and use an insulin that doesn't work for them, which is a problem with access. Oftentimes people go with the choice that they don't want, that doesn't work for them because it's cheaper.
Yeah, that touches on something so important that DPAC advocates for is patient choice. I don't know if you're familiar with like pharmacy benefit managers. They're like middlemen in the drug pricing system that kind of decide what goes on the formulary and decide what drugs you take, as opposed to you and your health team deciding what drugs you take. My colleague Erin actually just dropped in the chat that DPAC was founded because Medicare went to competitive bidding on glucose meters, meaning that the lowest cost option was the only one made available to Medicare users. And, like God forbid that happens to CGMs as well. So patient choice is so important in the experience of people with diabetes. On that note, what is one thing that you wish that people knew about diabetes technology, whether that's patients, caregivers, healthcare providers, or policymakers?
Am I going, Justin?
Yeah, go for it.
Down from PBM, that's a trigger word. I guess I actually want to if I can make a point on PBMs too, that process is so convoluted. It used to be that the most affordable option, like the most affordable to manufacture option, was the one that was preferred. However, that has shifted to essentially whichever one gets all parties involved the highest profit. So that medication or device might actually cost more to the middlemen. However, if they are benefiting from a higher return, then that is the medication or device that's getting covered. And so I don't know, I guess that's not exactly helpful information, but it's just infuriating. If you're looking into advocating, I guess that's a reason to do it.
So it is helpful. It's helpful so that people can get riled up and say, I want to change the system that's currently in place.
I mean, because I'm with Justin, the insulin that is on my formulary does not work for me. And so I have to do workarounds. And yes, I am not allergic. Certainly I could use the insulin that's covered. However, I have to take triple the amount. That means changing my pump site more often. That means when I'm traveling, I'm having more issues. There's more irritation. There's more scar tissue. So that is something that actually I explained to legislators to answer this question. Because this is a story I've told many of them. Yes, it's covered. Yes, I'm going to be alive if I take it. However, my quality of life is very different. And the way that insulin works, the pharmacokinetics, if somebody, sometimes when we're meeting with legislators, we actually get a clinical person. So then I'm like, oh, let's talk about pharmacokinetics. And we break that down. And I explain why this one works differently than this one. And why it's going to work better for this person versus that person, not just me. I've got plenty of stories I can share, including when I sold my house in order to be able to afford my insulin. And that usually catches their attention. So I think the biggest thing that I would want them to know is that patient choice and access can be just as powerful. I guess the right device is just as important as actual access to insulin. For someone who actually understands type 1 diabetes, and even type 2, how those different medications are better for different stages of type 2. You can't just say, oh, type 2, let's approve this medication, but everything else is going to be really costly. Or like Justin said, okay, you want that other insulin? Sure, we're going to cover it, but we're going to make it at a much higher tier. Therefore, your out-of-pocket costs are going to be unattainable for a lot of people. So they're essentially forcing you to do the one that they want because they get a bigger rebate on that. So I feel like access to all of the options can be just as life-saving as having access to insulin itself.
Yeah, I think for me, I kind of, what I brought up with my insulin being this outrageous price just because it's the one that works for me, that shouldn't be the case. If everyone's talking about, or like the government's like, we're lowering insulin prices, or all the insulin companies are saying we're lowering insulin prices, then why is my insulin so expensive for me? Just because it's the one that works for me. So that, I think that's frustrated me that, yes, I have an option that's $35, but it just doesn't work. And so I think all insulin, no matter what it is, the one that is right for you, the one that your doctor and you agree to, is the one that you need to use. It's not like we're throwing around this medication that's just for fun. This is a life-saving medication. The one main medication I need should not be so overblown in price. The other thing that I want people to still fight for is interoperability. And we're seeing that. We're seeing more and more CGMs work with other pumps. But there's still a lot more room to go there. And then also, there's room for algorithms to be part of this interoperability. So not just the CGM and pump you use, but the algorithm that's powering it. Like I said earlier, CAM-APS-FX is a phenomenal algorithm that is approved for pregnancy, yet there's no pump distributor in the US available to it. Now, I don't know how much work goes into just throwing in a new algorithm. I'm sure there's a lot there, especially since the algorithm requires the devices to talk to the phone, but DIY is doing it. So I'm sure the work can be done. So I would like to see interoperability with algorithms as well.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, we're coming up short on time, so I'm going to ask my last question really quickly. How can people with diabetes stay informed about new developments in diabetes technology and ensure they're making the most of available advancements? And a fun version of that question is, if you had a magic wand, what would you create or eliminate?
Well, you should follow my social
Oh
media.
yeah, no, you
Well,
actually
because
should.
it's funny. I was like, where do I get my news? And well, I get my news on LinkedIn. So I'd say LinkedIn, especially if you're a professional, it's like Twitter for diabetes news for me. I've curated my connections and the companies I follow. So follow all of the organizations, publications, and companies and people that are in the diabetes world, and it will give you the best timeline. Then I'd say you should follow my pages because I do try my best to be, up to date on everything and create content as soon as it lands. Sometimes even within an hour of a news drop, I'll have like a 60-second clip on social media. So my social, my newsletter, my podcast, my YouTube channel.
And sincerely, I would recommend following him as well. It's even if he wasn't on this podcast, on this webinar, to that point, Nerdabetic is another one. He's based in the UK, and I really appreciate following him. His name is Camille. I'm blanking on his last name, but Nerdabetic. I really appreciate his videos in particular because he's in Europe, and in Europe, things that are coming to the US went to Europe first in the majority of the cases. So I follow him and Justin to learn more about essentially what's coming to the US. And kind of to that point, if you're having issues with access or something has been discontinued, like, G6 is going to be going away soon. If you're obsessed with G6 and you're like, no, I don't want to lose it, or I don't like G7 or can't afford it, whatever, the things come from Europe. It tends to go Europe, US, and then Canada. So if something's discontinued in the US, it hasn't been discontinued yet in Canada. So I'm not saying this as a diabetes educator. Nobody report me as professionally, but as a person with type 1 who has had to fight to get what they need, look and explore avenues in Canada, especially if a device is being phased out in America. And also, I would seriously love to see PBMs imploded. I want to watch that. I want it to be slow though, not imploded. I want it to be slow. Painful death. And I just like one of the things that I've heard about at conferences is an insulin that actually combines insulin and glucagon. People that have been following Beta Bionics for a long time, the makers of Islet, that was their original goal, was to have a pump that has insulin and glucagon in the same device. Well, this company is developing a medication that's insulin and glucagon in the same device. And because we're short on time, I won't get into the geekiness of it. But in short, like that's the way our bodies work naturally. It sounds like crazy to think, oh, well, if you're putting out insulin, you're not putting out glucagon. That's counterintuitive, but that's actually not the case. Both are being produced at the same time, and so it's really exciting to me that there's an medication that's being studied that is going to do that. Something I learned about from Justin is. Luna, it's a pump that's coming out that's designed to only be worn overnight. I feel like autonomy is a really big piece of living with diabetes. If you don't want people to know, that's fine. If you don't want, if you just don't want the device to be seen, if you're, somebody who just doesn't want it to peek through your clothing, whatever the case may be. Luna is a pump that is designed to be worn only overnight. You can continue with your normal injections during the day, but a big fear for a lot of people is overnight hypoglycemia, and that is supposed to help tremendously with that. So yeah, I'm excited to see all the innovations coming, and if anybody knows of PBMs being ripped apart, let me know. I want to watch it.
We were
I
working.
have, do we have, oh yeah. Do we have time?
No, no,
I
no.
have, okay. Something that kind of, what you mentioned about the ADCES form earlier that sparked something in my head is I would like to see a way to, when the time comes in the US to look at new insurances, to be able to type in type 1 diabetes and for it to list out everything you need to know for every medication and option for type 1 diabetes. Every pump, every CGM, every insulin, every medication related to type 1, what the price is. So you can see how it changes for each insurance. Currently, that's not the case. Currently, you need to go on the phone, go from department to department to department, and not get an answer. That's how it works currently.
Yeah.
And I've documented that. I've talked about that on my channel and videos of my own experiences. It is so convoluted and it is not fair. And that shouldn't just be type 1. It should be any chronic illness, any situation you're in. You should be able to search that, and any related medication or medical equipment should have a price tag. It doesn't make sense to me that the price that health insurance in this company works like a car dealership. You don't know the price until you are about to buy it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that needs to be fixed. And then I did have a little piece of tech that I'd want to create, and it's related. It was a tubeless pump with CGM technology that also has glucagon and amylin, and as well as insulin. And I mean, we have lots of companies that are working on combined insulin pump and CGMs, which I've documented, like Nia and Medtronic hopes to do that in the future. And then bringing in glucagon, dual hormone pump, Beta Bionics, and Inrata. Inrata already has one that's being used by 200 people, but bringing in amylin, which helps with digestion, another hormone, could make it even better. But seeing an all-in-one device like that you put on and it lasts 10 days, there you go.
No, that would be amazing. That would change everything. So I guess to wrap up, you touched on something really important, Justin, which was the transparency. That's something that DPAC is also, we work on. We advocate for transparency of drug pricing and various other issues. And if you want to know more, or if you want to ask us questions that we didn't get to, there's our social media channels. Feel free to DM us. The link takes you to sign up to be a champion, where you can get more frequent updates on DPAC activities. And thank you all for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Justin and Melinda. And yeah, follow them on social media and follow us on social media too. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.